Welcome to Creekside Chats with Successful Real Estate Investors, brought to you by Steed Talker Capital, promoting prosperity and harmony to help you flourish in all areas of life. Join in as we explore the motivations and goals of real estate investors and how their ability to invest abundantly has provided them with the time and freedom to contribute to the world in a creative and thoughtful way. Now please welcome your host, Dr. Allen.
Enlightened Investors, Dr. Allen here with Dave Daley, who is no stranger to the show. Dave was one of the earliest guests. Go to episode 9 to learn more about Dave and his incredible journey from high school dropout and a near-death experience that transformed his life to become the monster motivator he is today. Welcome back, Dave.
What are you most grateful for today?
Honestly, just life itself, being able to get up and live life on my terms. And I believe that is everyone's definition of success, whether they realize it or not, is being able to live life on your terms, whatever that actually means for you.
Well, before we go further on that, since you say you're grateful to be able to have life today, to be able to wake up and live life on your terms, what happens when life throws you a curveball and throws you off track and your terms in life are in conflict with one another?
I think what it comes down to is understanding the power of contrast. See, when you can understand the power of contrast, now that becomes your strongest propeller instead of your heaviest anchor. So contrast is so powerful when you can look at it as a learning experience, right? And to me, knowledge is overrated in this world. Mm-hmm. To me, it's about the wisdom. And the only way to acquire wisdom is to be able to live those contrast moments and make them your strongest propeller instead of your heaviest anchor. And let me set the stage, because you went into George Floyd and where we're at today. And I'm going to share some real stuff with people with my background. But let me set the stage for this. Here's what it all comes down to. Victims never win. And when you live your life as a victim, you're giving other people the power over your journey. Victims never win. And if you want to be a victim, if you want to be identified as a victim, you will never, ever win. And we have a limited time in our journey. So decide now, do you want to be a victim or don't you? And here's the other thing. If you want to take the power back, you need to understand that you're the only one that has the power to decide what that title is for you.
Can you give us a concrete example from your own life experiences?
Sure. Even today, right? One thing that is so important to become that victor in life versus the victim is to identify the reality is we are human beings. So part of that is we are going to judge on first appearance. We are going to judge on physical appearance. It's who we are. It's what our conditioning is. Right or wrong, that's a fact. I am judged every day on my physical appearance. Your only job is to make them accurate. That's it. And I know we touched on this before, but it's so true. It's your only job is to make them accurate. So now what happens is you change that paradigm shift. So instead of saying, I knew they were going to look at me like that, I knew they were, and you identify and you take on that title, it starts to actually go in reverse. It starts to do that 180 where I get a kick out of people's response once they get to meet me. Man, you're so much nicer than we thought. Even had people say you're a lot smarter than we thought. And I love it. I absolutely love it.
I think, yeah, I think you're touching on some really, really deep wisdom in conjunction with that. Before we go further into that, so what are the 3 good things that you are most grateful for, or what 3 good things have happened to you in the last 24 hours?
Oh man, attracting the people and the circumstances at the perfect time. One is I've been focusing on attracting for the pit crew. We're going to be putting together not only digital soldiers, but physical soldiers. And I've attracted some amazing people in that world who just got back from Las Vegas last week, and amazing contacts. And then on top of that, we're relaunching our product line of dog supplements, and me and my manufacturer distribution down in Oklahoma are actually partnering on it. So we're ready to do that launch. And then on top of that, a really good friend of mine who's the founder of Active Valor, he's an ex-Navy SEAL, put me back in touch with one of his great contacts in the e-commerce world. So for me, it's about, I love the moving forward and that evolution and that feel, right, of that moving forward, growing and expanding. And I'm a big believer in this, Alan, that inspired action becomes magical. Here's what I mean. When you start to take that inspired action, the people and the circumstances just start to show up in your life. And I believe when people aren't taking that inspired action, that's a big reason why they feel unhappy, they feel depressed, they feel like they're, because we're here to grow, expand, and evolve. And that's part of our DNA. When we don't do that, we go back into safety, and that safety becomes a darkness.
Yeah, it becomes entropy, and it just,
you start using that muscle.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden,
right.
The muscle starts to weaken, deteriorate. And there it is.
I like that you put, I think a lot of gurus and a lot of trainers out there, they insist that there has to be action before there's results. And I totally and completely agree with that. But I think what a lot of gurus forget is what you put in front of that, which is inspiration. And I think you can put all of the action in the world you want into whatever endeavor it is you're looking for, and maybe you'll get some results, but I think they'll be minimized until you put inspiration before that action.
And let's go deeper on that and share with the audience why that is so powerful. Because when you start to tie in to your inspired part of you, that inner being, what that now allows you is allowing. You start to now allow, you start to rise above the noise, because now you're starting to listen to that inner being. So what happens is, that's the ultimate GPS, right? When you start to listen to your inner being, you can't go wrong. It's just when you, if you push that action, and a lot of people use action as an escape, and they don't even realize it. But when you start to pull back, listen to that inner being, now you're going to take that inspired action. So that flame's never going to go out, but you're going to go right down that river, man. You won't even need a paddle. You're just going to flow right down that river instead of trying to paddle upstream all the time.
Such a difference, yes. And I like what you said, that there's a lot of people that use action to avoid, I'm not sure that's exactly the word you use, but
escape.
Yeah, escape. Yes, escape. Exactly. Yeah. And it's so easy to do. We're just all the time. We're just there's some way to get involved in something, whether it's an argument on Facebook or whether it's work that we despise and hate. There's always some way to get into action. But until that inspiration comes before it, it's like you said, it's an escape there.
Yeah, and I think too, it really comes down to self-awareness. So I think it could be on one end of the spectrum or the other. More of a dominant personality would tend to use, and I'm that person, and I've done it plenty of times in my life, where you use action as an escape, but then there's other people that don't naturally have that dominant personality, and they'll use safety, going back, not doing anything, right?
Mm-hmm.
And as an escape, or other things,
Right.
substance and other things like that, but still not, either way, you're not following and listening to your inner being,
Right.
because your inner being only wants you to move forward in that inspired way.
Right. So I like the staying with the concrete, but I'm going to ask the esoteric question here, since we started out with this. COVID and George Floyd are so predominant now in the news and in the media, and have have brought so many things to light that I think have been buried within our culture, within our nation. And I'm not sure our nation is going to find its way out of all of this. So what are your thoughts in conjunction with all of that?
I believe it definitely will. I believe it'll, I think not only will we find our way out of it, it's going to be pretty amazing once we get past this. But that being said, let me give everyone a little bit of context and background on my background. I spent 17 years on the East Coast in the most violent cities that this country knows, starting when the LA riots broke off out here. So I spent 17 years in a city in New Jersey called Camden, Newark, Trenton, North Philly, Southwest Philly. When I say I spent 17 years, I wasn't a cop, so I didn't have a badge. I didn't have a gun. I had a public adjusting firm and a fire restoration business. So there's a lot of things that happen in those cities that brought me into those cities. So I spent more time in those cities than I did in my own neighborhood. Okay. I had rental properties I still have them back there, but for a certain period of time. So not only did I spend 17 years in the most violent cities, I actually broke bread and worked with, in a business aspect and a relationship aspect, with people in those inner cities that 99% of the people that are on the media outlets and the social media outlets trying to tell you what is what would not even drive through those cities, let alone spend any time in them. Okay. So I'm speaking from real world experience, and I've also been profiled, okay, on numerous occasions. I've been stopped because what the profile says is white male from the suburbs are the ones that are going to spend the money on the drugs. So I've been stopped, pulled over, walking down the street, stopped, asking what I'm doing there. That's just the reality of how they're doing their job. Profiling is part of doing a job. And society wants us to think that there's something wrong with that, when in reality, there's not, right? Let me go even a step further. People are talking about police abuse, right? 19 years old. I'm sitting in a jail cell. I'm looking at 8 to 10 years if things don't go my way. Here's why I say if things don't go my way. I was down at the Jersey Shore with my buddies. We got into an altercation. One of them was an off-duty cop that approached us. He got the wrong end of the deal. This went to court, and if it wasn't proven that they approached us, started the confrontation, my whole life would be completely different. But in that time frame, when we got arrested, they put us in the holding tanks and pretty much beat us up all night. Then took us to the judge, because that was That was a brotherhood. That was one of their brothers. And I remember my dad saying to me after everything cleared, he used to say to me, he goes, I really admire the way you never got angry with the cops and how they treat you. And I said to him, I get it. It's a brotherhood and they need to protect each other. Here's the other thing that I've done in life. I've done ride-alongs with buddies who are cops. So when the people have never stepped foot in inner cities, have never created relationships in inner cities, have never walked in the shoes of police departments, and they're going to tell you what is what, that's no different than someone coming to me or coming to you that has never built a business and is going to tell you how to become an entrepreneur. Don't work. It's all theory. Keep your theory. It gets in the way. I want wisdom. I want people that have been there and done that. So there's a whole lot going on. And now if we're going to talk about George Floyd and we're going to talk about the Black Lives Matter and we're going to talk about All Lives Matter and we're going to talk about, the reality is, look at the deaths in a weekend in an inner city, right? What that comes down to, whether it's popular or not, and here's one thing everyone has to understand. It's not my rules. They're not your rules. It's life's rules. Life says if you're going to be a victim, you're not going to win in life. So you have to learn how to not be a victim, change that title for yourself, and move on. And it also starts with the parenting, right? It also starts with raising your kids in a certain way. And you know what all this maps back to is your self-image. See, the greatest gift that any adult can give any child, whether it's your child or not, is a bulletproof self-image, because you're going to teach that child that it can fish for itself. Nobody has to fish for it, for them. When your self-image is it's either up here or it's down here, right? It's either growing, expanding, or dying out. And your self-image, you cannot outperform it. It's like that thermostat. You're going to set that self-image at 68. You cannot outperform it. You could build it up, you could tear it down, but you can't outperform it.
Yeah, I like that. That's really a good analogy. And it's so true. And you can talk to people and you can praise people. You can tell them all the possibilities they can and cannot do. And as long as their self-esteem is standing in the way, there's just no way it's going to happen.
Right. Let's go right back. And we talked about the power of contrast. Mm-hmm. That's where the power of contrast comes in. When you hit those bumps in the road, you figure out how to get up, wipe yourself off, and keep moving forward. That's where your self-image starts to actually build. When you go back into safety, that's when you start to tear down that self-image. And again, everything that we're saying here, everyone has to understand, these are not our rules. We didn't just wake up yesterday and make these rules up. We were born into these rules. These are life's rules. And if we were conditioned to give up, me and you, Alan, would be still crawling on all fours. But when at that time, nobody told us that a toddler can't walk. Even though we fell down, even though we bumped our head on the coffee table, even though we cried, we got back up. We figured it out and we kept moving forward.
Well, let's talk about your dog.
Okay. Yeah.
Or dogs. I don't know. You probably have more than one dog.
I have one, and most of the time I do because of the connection, the relationship. And I love animals and I feel connected to animals, and I always have. And there's a pure energy. and I can sit and watch nature for hours. I can watch, and we'll get back to the dog part, but I feel, and I feel a special connection to elephants. And when I look in their eyes, if I'm right there with them, there's a soul. There's an old soul, as we say. And there's just something there that is majestically beautiful, deep. So I love nature and I love animals. And I love dogs because of the living. They've mastered the art of living in the now and not holding grudges. They've mastered what us humans, we're supposed to be superior, what us humans seem to struggle with on a daily basis. Every single morning, my guy wakes up and it's Christmas morning. We do the same routine, and he embraces it, and everything that he does at the highest level. So right now he's on his bed and he's sleeping. He's snoring like a baby, couldn't care less. And if I want to take him out for a walk, I got to be careful saying that word. He jumps up and goes. And I love that. I connect to that, and I admire that. I truly admire that unconditional life and way of life. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. And I love how you have made that connection with not just your dog, but with wildlife in general. Talk to us a little bit about the experiences with the elephants. I think they're just amazing creatures. I've never been really up close and personal with elephants. So tell us about some of those experiences.
And let me share this too. I've only been like at the wildlife and at a zoo. So it's not like I've spent any time, which it's definitely on my radar to go into their real habitat. But there's just something their whole energy, their gait, their connection to their family order. And when you watch the little babies, they literally, the moms and the aunts just always protecting and guiding and teaching and moving forward. But for me, it's the eyes. It's the eyes. There's just a soul. There's an old soul there that I connect with and I feel. And then the other thing is, when you look at the end of their trunks, man, they're so strong, but so tender at the same time. Yeah. It's such an awesome push-pull, if you will. It's really pretty amazing when you look at nature and what nature really has created and accomplishes on a daily basis. But the trunk is, at the end of that trunk, they can pick up a peanut, crack it, and eat it. They can also take that trunk, wrap it around a tree trunk, and rip it out of the ground. So I think I connect to that as well because, again, people perceive me a certain way when they first meet me. And then after we have some time together, they see both of those connected. So it's like the trunk. Never thought of that before, but I just did.
Yeah. Yeah. Since you mentioned that, I've noticed the same thing with horses. They don't have a trunk, but it just amazes me how dexterous their lips are, and at the same time so extraordinarily tender. But they can rip a weed out of the ground or rip the grass out of the ground.
Yeah.
With those lips. They do use their teeth as well, but
you're right.
And it amazes me how minutely selective they those big old mouths can be, because they could pick a pea out of a casserole.
Yeah.
and elephants are the same way with their trunks there.
It's amazing. It
is. It truly is. Amazing creatures, and we as humans, like, we just think we're so intelligent, and we disregard the intelligence of other beings. It's different for certain, but it certainly is an intelligence that I think humans can learn from and should learn from.
Yeah.
So tie all this together and just sum it up, because we're out of time here. Just sum it up all together, everything we've talked about today in terms of your motto of motivation, inspiration, and perspiration.
Yeah. So the theory behind that is you need all three, but more importantly, you need all three in that order. So you need something that's going to wake you up, get you up in the morning to move forward. And that's something that's going to motivate you. And then second, you need something that's going to come from here, that inspiration, that why. Because once that motivation starts to die off, now that inspiration is just going to keep carrying it along. And nothing happens when you get to that next step without inspired action. And then that just becomes magical. But if you do it in reverse and you take all this action without identifying the motivation and the inspiration, you're chasing your tail, and pretty soon the flame dies out.
As always, Dave, it has been a pleasure. And folks, you can find Dave Daley. Just go to the internet, Dave Daley, Monster Motivator, and you'll find all kinds of information about Dave. So connect with Dave and reach out to Dave. Thank you so much, Dave, for being on the show today.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your time.
Thank you for joining us on Creekside Chats with Successful Real Estate Investors, brought to you by Steed Talker Capital. For more information, as well as access to our free ebook on enhancing your well-being through real estate investing, be sure to connect with us at steedtalker.com. As part of our efforts to make the world a better place, Steed Talker Capital contributes to activities and organizations committed to better understand the equine and enhance the humane treatment of horses worldwide. Steed Talker Capital, working for a world where all creatures, great and small, flourish abundantly. Connect with us at steedtalker.com.